In order to create a nice drawing file and keep it nice and clean for what we're going to do for class, we'd like to create a template that we can use over and over again that already have our class information in it that will allow us to continue to go back to that. We just need to ensure that each time after we complete that template, that we use the template, that we save it as something different and don't end up accidentally saving over our template. So we're going to create that template, that drawing template file now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go New. We're going to create a new standard IDW drawing file, and we're going to say create. So you're going to notice it already has a certain size aspect to it. It already has a border around it, and for our purposes this is actually pretty large. This is larger than a standard size sheet of paper. So we're going to go up here and we're going to right click on sheet. We're going to go to our edit sheet, and we're going to change the size, because right now it's a 22 inch by 34 inch, much larger than what we'd want to work with. We don't have a printer that will print on that. So let's go with a size A. You notice that's an 8.5 by 11 now. So we could name that. We could name it something like template. We're not going to worry about it at this point. When we get towards the end, we can actually go back and change that. We can always go back and change that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get rid of our default border. So we're going to delete that off. There, it's gone. We're going to delete this title block off because now you're noticing that it's very large. We don't really want to deal with that large of a title block right now. So we're going to go ahead and delete that off also. So now that we have that gone, we would like to go through and we like to create a new border. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a rectangle. So we're going to go to Drawing Resources, we're going to go to Borders, and we're going to right click and we're going to say Define New Border. So as we go up here, we're going to use a 2-point rectangle. If we want to make sure it's a 2-point rectangle, we can drop down, 2-point rectangle right there. And what we need to do is this is locked at the point of origin. So it's a nice reference point for us to be able to look at. So if we come down here to the corner, we wanted to start a rectangle. If we want it to be 0.125, so an 1/8 of an inch away from all edges, and we have an 8.5 by 11 page, what we can do is we can say, okay, that's our reference point of 0, 0, X and Y down there. So if we will hit the tab, it'll take us into that box and we can say 0.125. We can tab over 0.125 and we can hit enter. That's going to give us our starting point for our 2-point rectangle, and you're going to notice that it starts to come up and across. Well, if we want to have a 0.125 on one edge and 0.125 space on the other edge, we're going to have to add those together, so that gives us a total of 0.25. If we take 0.25, subtract that away from our 11 inches that we're currently showing highlighted as 10.726 at the top left on the heads-up display. If we were to take 0.25 away from 11, we're going to end up with 10.75, and we hit tab. And then if we took 8.5 and we subtracted off 0.25 from 8.5, we're going to end up with 8.25. So if we hit enter, that should make a nice border around the edge. So we've got just a very basic border, and we're going to say finish sketch. What do we call this border? Let's just call it a plain border. And we're going to save that. So now you're going to notice under borders we have the default border and we have a plain border. So when we go to make this, we can actually use that plain border. Now, one of the things we'd also like to do is we'd like to have a nice title block that already shows everything that we would like to have in our title block. Now this one's going to take a little bit more effort, so it's going to take a little bit more time to work with because we want to have plenty of information in here. We're going to make a title block that goes all the way across the page. So we're going to make a title block that's going to be about 10.75 by 0.875 inches in width and height. So we're going to go through and try to make that title block. So we're going to go into title block under Drawing Resources. We're going to right click on this and we're going to say we want to create or define a new title block. So we have a new title block started. Okay. We're going to use a 2-point rectangle to sketch. So we're going to come back up to our 2-point rectangle. Make sure it's a 2-point rectangle. Okay, and we're going to come over here, and we know that we need to start off 0.125 from this X edge, and the other part we can arrange that later if we'd like. So we can go ahead and do that. We could go ahead and place this right down at the very bottom, just a little bit off from the edge. So let's just go ahead and try that out. 0.125. And we want this total length of this to be 10.75 by 0.875 is the total size that we want this title block to be. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter. So now we have our title block started down here at the bottom. We're going to need to create some extra blocks on this. So this is where we start to have to make sure that we do good with our dimensioning. This is inside the presentation that you have for class, so you can follow along and look at that presentation while you're actually watching this video, or you can pause the video every so often to keep up with what we're working with. So we're going to keep making some 2-point rectangles. So this rectangle is going to be 3.5 by 0.44 in height. And there's that block. I'm going to do the same thing from this side, and it's going to be the same size block. It's going to be 3.5 by 0.44. We're going to make a smaller block out here in the middle. So this is basically just going to fill this whole middle section. So we're going to just go ahead and complete it there. So we'll make it the 3.75 is fine. And then the height of this one is actually just going to be 0.3. So it's our next block. Okay, we're going to, this is already divided in two. We've already got this divided in two. We would like a couple of little small blocks right here and right here. We'll talk about what we're going to use these blocks for at a later point. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to come and make this block, and we're going to make it 0.75 in width, and we're going to go ahead and leave that height the same, just match that up with what's already there. And we're going to come over to this side, and you would think this one would be the same size, but we're going to go ahead and make it 1.00 and leave the height the same. And now we have our basic title block. So we're going to add some text boxes and some color to our actual title block down here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Fill Hatch. We're going to choose our section that we want to fill hatch. We're going to click on our little hash marks here, and we're going to change the pattern to a solid. We're going to come down here to color. We're going to choose some kind of a light color that we actually put text over the top of. I'm going to choose orange, and now we have those boxes. Now what we'd like to do, and if you'd like, you can actually scroll in and out on these. Say okay, scroll in and out to make this a little better size. You can go and move it around by grabbing the pan and slide it around so you can actually see things a little bit better. So we're going to choose text, and we're going to put some text boxes inside of the top of these. Each one of these boxes lets us know what we want to put there. So we're going to come over to the top. The size that we would like to put in the small boxes is going to be 0.1 for our text. We're going to go ahead and leave it for the default of Tahoma. And when we put things in these boxes, we really want to put everything in caps. So you can either use the caps lock or you can use the shift. But we use block format whenever we do these things. So we're going to say drawn by. Our box here in the middle, we're going to put a text box in the middle of it. And we're going to make this format a little bit larger. Go ahead and call it 0.188. This information is also inside the presentation, so you can go back and use that. We're going to go ahead and bold that also. So we're going to go ahead and call this MNTC Engineering. We're going to center MNTC Engineering in there. And we should have that centered inside of the box. So we're going to go to text. The rest of these will just be aligned to the left. And draw our box, next box up here. Remember, we're going to change that to 0.1. Going to make sure we do everything in caps. It's going to be a checked by. because whenever you do a drawing you want a witness, and that's going to add validity to your drawings. So that one's okay. We're going to add another text box. Point 1. This is going to be our title. Going to move that one down just a little bit. Got a little bit close to the top. Another text box. Point 1. Part number. We may not always have a part number, but typically if you're making an assembly you would have some sort of part number you'd be assigning to that part. And we can tell by looking at this that this is not quite going to fit the way we'd like it for it to. So we need to do some changes to this just to mess with it a little bit. And it's a little better there. So we can move this, you can move this down. My box, I put it up a little bit high for that. So let's work with these last two. So this one is going to be our size box. And this one is going to be our tolerance. So we're going to put a standard tolerance number in here. So we'll talk about designations for our tolerance later, and we'll type a tolerance in there at a later point. But at this point we should be good with all of our dimensions. And so we will say finish sketch. And we will name this I'm just going to go ahead and name mine MNTC Engineering and hit save. Now we're going to add our border and add our title block. Now what I've noticed is if you add your title block before you add your border, the title block always seems to go off to one side, and then when you put your border on it seems to be okay. So let's go ahead and add our border. So we're going to go ahead and say insert. So there's our border, and we're going to go ahead and expand our title block. We're going to say insert our title block, and it seemed to be just fine. At this point we're going to save this as our pre-engineering template. We don't want this one to get messed up, so we're just going to go ahead and call it MNTC I'm going to go ahead and leave it in all caps. That way we can look at it. It looks like it's important to say this is an important file. Make sure that we keep that. So now, anytime we go to open this, if we go and open this, as I've got it open right now, we do not want to end up making changes on this. Make it quicker. You could go through and actually put in your drawn by. You could put in, that's probably about all you could go ahead and put in there. But you could also wait and print this out and then put your information inside of there, or type it in there either way. If we want to make this to where we can actually do a drawing in it, we would then want to do save as, and we'd want to save this and change it to whatever we're currently working on. So we'll do that in the next little video.